Let me explain to everyone first how many times I perform the vital capacity test. If the person is standing during the test, I naturally stand with my feet apart. When I measure his vital capacity like this, it's 3, 0. When I measure it while sitting, his highest vital capacity is 3, 500. What does this indicate? It means his feet are not stable because when standing, the support comes from the feet. But when sitting, I'm supported by the back of my thighs and the ischial tuberosities. As a result, my vital capacity immediately improves. When vital capacity improves, doesn't that mean the ability to exhale is stronger? This means the breathing ability has improved. So, by using data, we allow members to visualize and quantify another result. For example, if a person's vital capacity is 3, 0 when standing, but only 2, 500 when sitting, what does that indicate? It means his ischial support is insufficient, and when standing, he compensates by using his feet and thighs. You need to understand the principle behind each test. Additionally, it also indicates that when sitting, he cannot effectively engage the abdominal muscles responsible for exhalation. When he stands up and the support area is smaller, these abdominal muscles have to work harder to maintain stability. During exhalation, he engages them more than when sitting, so his exhalation performance is better. Therefore, you need to determine whether the issue is that his ischial support is insufficient or that his abdominal muscles are not being properly activated. After you measure your vital capacity, you'll get a bunch of data. Let me give you a few criteria. If you tell me all your vital capacity data, I can clearly tell you how you like to stand in daily life, how you like to sit, and which leg you prefer to cross when you sit with your legs crossed. When you cross your legs, do you cross them inward or outward? How do you sleep? How do you usually sleep? And how do you sleep on your side? Your personality, where you feel pain, where you might experience pain, and where you might have limitations. I can tell all of this. So this is even more accurate than astrology or fortune telling, because this measures your breathing and every single part of your body needs to breathe. So I'll have you stand with both feet, then sit to the side and support yourself with your right foot. What I'm testing is which side you usually put your weight on. In this state, for example, if I support myself with my right foot and rest my left foot, normally when both feet are to the side, my lung capacity is 3,000. But if I support myself with just my right leg and my measured lung capacity is even higher than when I use both legs, what does that mean? If supporting myself with my right leg gives a result 200 higher, making it 3,200, it means my left leg is holding me back. If both feet together are 3,000, the right foot alone is also 3,000, but the left foot alone is 2,000. What does that mean? It means the left side can't provide enough support. It means that when you're supporting yourself on the left side, all your respiratory muscles turn into stabilizing muscles, which suppresses your breathing, so your lung capacity is very low. So if your right leg supports a lung capacity of 3,000 and your left leg supports only 2,000, that when he was walking, do you think he can walk normally? No way. So people like this shouldn't run, nor should they do squats. If you try to squat, this will happen when you go down. You'll come up like this. You've probably seen a lot of people squat like this. The left side can't bear weight. So when squatting, either you push this way, or if it's the right ankle that's stuck, you might push until you can't go down any further. Then push to the other side, and when you run out of strength there, you push again. That's why some people end up twisting in a knot. So basically, when I watch someone do a squat, I can pretty much tell how their joints are aligned, and even their lung capacity. Whenever one of your legs can't bear weight, you'll shift toward the opposite side when you squat. When you shift to the opposite side and your opposite knee gets injured, it actually has nothing to do with this side. It's because your other side isn't doing its job. It's not bearing weight. So last year when I was teaching, I mentioned that if you can't breathe in a certain posture, then that posture doesn't belong to you. No matter how strong the muscles are that you've trained to maintain that posture, if you can't breathe, you'll end up shifting to the other side. Because for the brain, breathing is far more important than posture. This is about the support from the left and right feet. Now, if we compare the standing side and the kneeling side, isn't it also true that the foot on the kneeling side is being blocked or not used? What if this person has a bunion or flat feet, or if the bones in their lower legs are naturally of different lengths, so they have a structurally unequal leg length, but their thighs are the same length? In that case, would it still have an impact or not? So the main purpose of the standardized test is to eliminate the influence of factors like the lower leg and heel, bunions, flat feet, or high arches, or if someone previously had a comminuted fracture in the lower leg, or both the tibia and fibula were fractured and then reconnected, resulting in the two legs being different lengths. In such cases, when standing, one side can bear weight while the other cannot. So if you see that this client has a much higher vital capacity when measured kneeling than when standing, it means there's either a problem with their lower leg or with their foot. Some people might ask, since you already measured it sitting, why bother measuring it kneeling as well? Isn't that redundant? Do you think it's redundant? Why isn't it redundant? Let me explain. When you go from standing to sitting, neither your feet, lower legs, nor thighs are involved in supporting you, right? When I sit down like this, my feet, lower legs, and thighs aren't providing any support, correct? But when I'm kneeling, isn't it true that my thighs are involved in supporting me? So if a person's thigh structure, meaning their thighs are naturally different lengths, you won't be able to detect it by going directly from standing to sitting. If that data is better when sitting than standing, you can only prove there's an issue below the ischium. But you still can't tell whether the problem is with the lower leg, thigh, or foot. So if I add a cabinet in between, then I can determine whether the problem is with the thigh or the lower leg. Now, suppose the data I get is like this. When I measure standing, it's 3,000. When I'm sitting, it's 3,500. And when I'm kneeling, it's also 3,500. So where's the problem? It's the lower leg and foot, right? Now, in another scenario, if I'm standing, it's 3,000. Sitting is 3,500. But kneeling, it's still 3,000. Where's the problem then? Now I'll teach you how to interpret this data. Let me repeat. If the measured vital capacity is 3,000 standing, 3,500 sitting, but still 3,000 when kneeling, where's the issue? The problem is with the thigh. Why not the lower leg and foot? Because if the issue were with the lower leg and foot, blocking them off should have led to some improvement. So you need to be clear about what each set of data actually represents. What exactly are you measuring? After you finish these tests, you'll actually know which side of the pelvic floor muscles isn't engaging properly. What I'm teaching you is how to use breath to prove your method, because if you just say there's a problem, but it can't be seen or touched, it's hard to sell your course. Members won't believe you. They'll think you're just trying to trick them into buying your course. But lung capacity, when measured on the same machine, can't be faked. I can even measure your heart rate for you. If you think my machine isn't reliable, you can bring your own fingerclip device from home. Bring it over and I'll help you test it. Do you know what this measures? The power supply section measures the pronation and supination of the ilium. And during pronation and supination, it's accompanied by abduction and adduction. Let me ask you a question. If someone is in this position and the measurement comes out to 3, 0, but when they switch sides, it's 3,500, what does that mean? When I'm standing like this, which leg am I putting my weight on, the front leg or the back leg? Right now, my body is upright. I'm not leaning. Generally, when you do lunges in the gym, how many types of lunges are there? One type is like this, and another type is like that. Right now, I'm doing it this way. I'm putting the weight on the back leg, not the front leg. The focus is on the back leg. The front leg is just helping to stabilize. But if I do it like this, then I'm putting the weight on the front leg because my body weight is pressing straight down. So if you don't understand this, you won't understand the measurement. So if the measurement in this position is 3-0, and when you switch sides, it's 3,500, what does that mean? It means the left side isn't bearing weight. The left side usually can't provide support. So by measuring like this, I can immediately tell which side of the pelvic floor muscles can't be activated. That way, when a client comes in for their first session, I just do a lung capacity test. And I can ask them a lot of questions. I simply let them verify that what I'm saying is correct, and that's enough. Every question I ask is spot on. Every single one is accurate. They start to wonder, is this a gym or something? How do you know everything? But of course, you can't just meet a woman in her 20s for the first time and immediately ask her, hey, on your left side, does your anus have a little lump that pops out? It's possible that's the case, but you can't just ask so directly. You can tell just by testing his lung capacity is terrible. And when he stands on one leg, his balance is obviously poor. People like this often have pain, and it's the kind of pain that lingers and doesn't heal for a long time. No matter how skilled your massage, acupuncture, or bone setting techniques are, they only provide temporary relief because you haven't restored his breathing on this side, nor have you restored his weight-bearing ability on this side. You're just under all sorts of compensations in breathing and weight-bearing, seeing abnormal joint alignment, and you manually push it back into place for him. And when his muscle tone is imbalanced in various ways, your techniques only temporarily balance his muscle tone. So in this situation, only after you truly understand these principles can you actually solve the problem. So what does this test measure? This one measures the ischem. Do you know what the difference is between this and the single leg stance test? Now, by blocking the lower leg and foot like this, I'm also blocking the lower leg and foot. So why do I still need to test which one is locked? Also, there's another test that measures the gluteus medius and minimus. This way, I can find out which side of his lower leg has a problem. When I do this test, if his vital capacity increases, there are two possibilities. First, which leg is behind and which is in front if it's the left. Then the left lower leg and foot have an issue. Second, there could be a problem with the left gluteus medius and minimus, meaning the left side isn't bearing weight and the left pelvic floor muscles can't engage. After I test this, I'll know. Once I've measured the vital capacity, I'll know which exercises are suitable for this member. If the difference in the vital capacity data between his two legs shown on the machine is greater, the less suitable this member is for so-called balance training. Deadlifts and squats are inherently unbalanced. Doing what appears to be relatively balanced training is actually increasing the intensity and stabilizing the body in an unbalanced state. So for this kind of member, doing unbalanced training is actually what brings them balance. Many people don't really understand this. They end up forcing themselves into increasingly complex compensation patterns. That's why I say, if when supporting themselves on their left knee, one side measures 3,000 and the other 4,000 difference of 1,000, and you have them do barbell squats or the big 3 lift, then you're actually doing this member a disservice. What's more, it becomes very difficult to do any rehabilitative adjustments for them later on because you've reinforced those patterns too aggressively. And you've done so while they're in this unbalanced, relatively poor state. You've made it even more rigid, turning their rubber band into reinforced concrete. So the adjustment period afterward will be even longer. This is specifically for those people who can't sit still to test which side of their sit bones is actually off the seat, to find out which side they can't settle on. As long as you improve the lung capacity on the side where the sit bone needs support and is weak and train that well, then they'll be able to sit still, and that side will be able to support them. So now you know what this test is for. This movement is actually a bit complicated, but what I want to tell you is that for some members, only with this support can their lung capacity reach its maximum. Now let me tell you, the main focus here is to test the pelvic floor muscles. I'll show you some diagrams later. For now, let me briefly explain. When I squat down like this, isn't the angle of hip flexion greater than 90 degrees? As long as the hip flexion reaches 90 degrees and goes further, the ilium must act as a candidate. Ilium must rotate backward, right? So when I have them squat like this, isn't their spine in a flexed position? The erector spinae muscles are attached to the sacrum here. So when the ilium rotates backward, the entire erector spinae is lengthened. So what happens then? When the ilium rotates backward, isn't it accompanied by the ischium abducting and rotating outward? When the ilium abducts, the ischium abducts. When the erector spinae is lengthened, attaches to the sacrum, doesn't it pull the sacrum into an anterior tilt, making the base of the sacrum nod forward? If there's a rubber band above and you pull it like this, the sacrum will move upward along with it. The ilium rotates backward, the sacrum moves upward. Which opening does this create? It opens the lower pelvic outlet, meaning it opens the exit of the pelvis. Only when outlet is open can the hammock go up. That's why for many people, it's only when they squat like this that their pelvic floor muscles can function during exhalation. So if you're interested, you can look into this. You could collect some big data, for example, in places like Northern Shaanxi or Henan, where people are used to squatting to eat or chat from a young age. After eating, people squat like this to chat, though you think their likelihood of developing hemorrhoids is higher or lower. Let me put it this way. The longer you spend squatting on the toilet, the higher your risk of getting hemorrhoids. But the more often you squat to chat in daily life, the lower your risk of hemorrhoids. That's because when you spend a long time on the toilet, you have to use your abdominal and diaphragm muscles to push downward, which creates too much pressure below. When you're squatting and chatting, as you talk and exhale, your pelvic floor muscles are always lifting upward. In this squatting position, your lower opening is relaxed, but that guy with a dual standby posture, just know we can't do this movement. See if you can squat like me with your feet together, like this. Later, I'll explain to everyone his kind of compensatory pattern. If he's in the dual standby posture, it means both of his anterior iliac bones are rotated forward. When both iliac bones are anteriorly rotated, it restricts their ability to rotate backward. So if your iliac bones can't rotate backward anymore, when you squat all the way down, your iliac bones can't go into a posterior tilt. If he still manages to squat down, he can only do so by sacrificing the natural curve of his lumbar spine, or by using other compensatory mechanisms, such as loosening the ligaments at the back of the hip joint. The requirement that was originally to move forward is now being forced backward, but the requirement is to keep it straight. Place your hand on your shoulder and get into a squatting position. Let me see a normal squat. Do you see it? Stand sideways and look at his waist. If his bilateral Ober's test is positive and you still ask him to do deep squats, the probability of a lumbar disc herniation increases many times over. Because as soon as he goes past 90 degrees, that is, as long as he squats below 90 degrees while holding the barbell, he starts to round his lower back and flex his lumbar spine. Try it again. Squat down slowly. Did you see that? As soon as he reaches 90 degrees, his lower back starts to round. So all the intervertebral discs behind will be pushed backward, and the natural curve of his lower back will straighten out. This is a pattern actually shouldn't be able to go down, but instead he can. So what do we call this? This is called dysfunctional function. You shouldn't be able to go down in this position. But you insist on going down, so other parts of your body have to pay the price. Now you understand the principle behind this. This movement opens up the pelvic outlet, allowing the pelvic floor muscles to lift up, which is used to test lung capacity. If your lung capacity increases significantly in this position, do you know what that means? It means that both ischial bones are adducted. What am I talking about? I mean, if you test it this way and there isn't much change, if there isn't much change in the previous positions, and only in this position does the lung capacity reach its highest, what does that mean? If there was anterior rotation of the ilium on one side, it would have shown up in the earlier tests, right? But if the data from the earlier test doesn't change much, whether supporting with the left knee or the right knee, the lung capacity doesn't vary much. And then suddenly, under the support, the lung capacity increases significantly. It means that both sides are tilted forward, and both ischial bones are adducted. That's why in this posture, the lower part can open up. After turning it on like this, its lung capacity will suddenly improve. In this case, you know that it may be dual standby. So you can use the Orban double-sided test to verify this.